Episode 2, New York State of Mind. Before the car in Hollywood, there was a taxi in Brooklyn. It was New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2000. I had just flown out of Detroit, landed at New York LaGuardia, and spent the last hour of the year stuck in traffic on my way to a new life. I didn't know anybody, I didn't know what was coming, but I believed anything was possible. This podcast is about reinvention, but before you can understand the reinvention, you have to understand the dream. I was fresh out of Michigan State University with a telecommunications degree. I probably still had my cap and gown on. I walked the ceremony December 9th that year, and 22 days later, here I am boarding a flight to New York. Um, I was excited, fearless, grateful, and naive at the same time. I was leaving everyone and everything familiar to me. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew something was going to happen. And I was thinking that New York was the place where my life would begin. I wasn't running away from home or anything. I was just running towards possibility. I really didn't want to go anywhere, but my last semester in school, I was sending out my resume, trying to do internships, anything that might anchor me here locally. Cause I had a lot of friends. I didn't want to leave. I had a beautiful girlfriend from Chile that I wanted to full heartedly to marry when she graduated. And, I just didn't want to go anywhere. But somehow I learned about, a movie. I can't remember if it was Fox or ABC, one of the two, some movie that was, being shot in Detroit and, made for TV movie, and, I figured I'd go to the audition, and I'd just see if I could, land a part at the audition, and when I got there, I I auditioned for the role right in front of the director. He was the one hosting the auditions, and, he asked me some question about, I guess I had made a resume, and he asked me something like, so you're like a production student?" Something to that effect, and I remember telling him, "Yes, I'm a telecommunication major, and my emphasis was media arts, and, I had worked on a student movie. We ended up winning third place in the East Lansing Film Festival for this movie. It was a very long short. It was almost 70 minutes. So it was either a short feature or a long short, whichever way you look at it. I don't know. But in any case, I was telling him about that, and he said, "Oh, what did you do on it?" And I said, "I really did the sound design." And so he said, "Well, regardless of this role, I'll hold on to your information." And sure enough, he I didn't book the role, you know, but he calls me. Somebody called me and asked me if I wanted to work with the sound crew, uh, be like I guess an intern, production assistant, intern for the sound department. It was a 10-day movie shoot. He would not promise me that I'd get to work on it all 10 days, but they would keep me as long as they could. I don't think I was even getting paid. And but heck, I was like, yeah. I mean, this was a real live movie set in being filmed in Detroit. So I was thrilled to do that. And the movie, man, I wish I could remember the name. I think it was called The Elevator, but projects start off with one title and then the title might morph into something else. So don't quote me on that. But I do remember at least two of the stars. One was Elizabeth Berkley, who was um, her claim to fame was the whole Saved by the Bell show. And one of the other stars was Christopher Duncan. And I remember at one point, Chris, man, he could clown. He was so funny. Wow, he's a very serious guy. I mean, like he's played Malcolm X in some movie. Um, but yet he got a huge sense of humor. And he's done the sitcom roles too. So, any case, we're having some conversation, and I think I asked him, what would you recommend for someone, to become an actor? What kind of advice could you give me? Because I really still, I wasn't finding, I didn't know what I was gonna do. It wasn't like I had a lead or a secure job in the industry at that point. I was just here on an internship. So, he said to me that if you really wanna be an actor, you should enroll in at least like a 2-year conservatory program. He said that should get you on solid ground. So I started researching acting conservatories, and there was one in New York. Well, I mean, obviously there's multiple conservatories, but there was one in New York that I decided, okay, I'll submit a tape, an audition tape for them, and just see what happens. And basically, they were offering an accelerated 2-year conservatory program that would begin in January. So this was like very quickly after my I would graduate. So in any case, the program would only be a year and a half, but you would get, you take the same classes and you'd have to stay in school over the summer. Um, and so I did that. I auditioned and I got word that I had been accepted, which was it was it was bittersweet. It was bittersweet because it was sweet because I mean, obviously, you know, New York is an amazing place. Many have called it the greatest city in the world. And to be accepted at this conservatory, which would put me in that environment, opened up a lot of possibilities. But it was bitter because I was going to have to leave a lot of people and a lot of relationship equity, a lot of friends. I was gonna have to leave a lot of things in my life that I was happy about. So that part was I was feeling a little anxiety about, right? But I didn't have any other option. I mean, it was that or go, I guess go work a job in the mall or something, potentially keep trying to submit the resume around and maybe hopefully somebody eventually might hire me in the field that I went to school for. So, make a long story short, too late. I was supposed to fly out the day before New Year's Eve. I was supposed to fly out the day before New Year's Eve because I was actually hoping that I'd get to New York and I'd have at least the night to settle in, and then the next night would be New Year's Eve. And since any, I didn't know anybody and I didn't have any plans or anything, I'd go to Times Square and watch the ball drop. And I figured it'd be probably pretty cold, and yeah, maybe in my early 20s I might fill up for something like that. But as life moves on, it probably wouldn't be as appealing to me later in life. So I was thinking, let me take this opportunity to um to do that. However, there was a major snowstorm that snowed my flight in and it canceled. So I then had to fly out the next night, which I wasn't thrilled about, and it was delayed. I mean, I think we sat on the runway for like 3 hours, de-icing and all that stuff. So in any case, riding in the back of that cab, I just remember thinking like, "Oh, it's just so like, man, what am I getting into?" Like, this is like looking around the city was wow, and it was nighttime, so I couldn't see it in all of its grandeur, I'll say. Um, but I the taxi driver was like, "Happy New Year." And I was, "Oh, man, oh, it's the New Year? Oh, yeah, yeah, Happy New Year," and I was on my way. New York was a fabulous, I mean, fabulous place for a young person in my position. I was always, as a teenager, I was watching MTV, here and there, because I liked music, right? And so this is like the MTV was like the godfather of the reality shows, or the modern reality shows with the real world. And I would watch some of that. I watched I don't even remember which one. I think it was in New Orleans that I really got fond of the show. And so I decided, man, I want to work for MTV. I want to work there. That's going to be one of the first places I go to try to get hired, and I'm going to work for MTV and work for MTV and live the dream. Well, little did I know that I get up into the MTV lobby, and this is just a very foggy memory because this is pre 9/11. This is pre Facebook, Instagram, MySpace, all that stuff. This is pre that time period. People were not walking around with cell phones. I didn't even have a cell phone at that point. So like taking pictures and all this kind of stuff, that wasn't going on. So my memory of this is really foggy, but I feel like I was in a lobby with countless amounts of other people just waiting for a potential interview. And I probably stayed there maybe 3 hours and just gave up. It was like, yeah, this will take some time today. So it that was a lesson. That was a lesson. The lesson I learned from that is probably the dream doesn't open just because you arrive, right? So in fact, New York didn't care that I had a dream. New York just wanted to know what I could do. So now I'm going to this conservatory. I'm enrolled in this program, and you have the same classmates in all your classes. So we all had the same schedule. We all worked the same variety of scenes. We all got to know each other really close and intimately, if you know what I mean. It was like I don't know. It's kind of like being in elementary school in a way because you just you saw everybody all the time, all day, and then you went back home, or most of us were living in their, I guess, what you they didn't have dorms, but they had recommended apartments we should move to, and oh man, they were in Brooklyn Heights. I'm trying to think what they were called. I don't even think they exist anymore. I think it was the Tillery Lofts or something like that. And it was in Brooklyn Heights, which is a fabulous, fabulous little, well, I don't know how little it is, fabulous section of Brooklyn. A lot of just photographic scenery. It was like nothing I had ever seen. Um, and I loved it. But the building itself, ooh, it's like the walls were made of like cardboard. My mom was like, I hope this place is awfully expensive. Um, and I said to her, yeah, well, I'm hoping the place it's really expensive because it's really nice. And I think I had two other roommates. My first one, yeah, I had two other roommates, and I was paying something like 800 a month, something that sounded really high to me at the time. Keep in mind, I had left an apartment in East Lansing that was like a luxury apartment for like $500 a month. So, it was a one bedroom, but nonetheless, here I am. I've gone from that to sharing, I didn't even have a private room. I had literally shared a loft space with two other guys, and we were like, we didn't have separate bedrooms. Okay, so, and I'm paying like 850 for this. So, in the shower, oh man, it was like holes in the wall. Like it was just that cardboard box apartment. It had a lot of space, but it was like it was a nightmare. It's just yuck. Um, in fact, I hope they tore that building down. But I get there. I'm attending school like 5 days a week. I'd say like 9 to 5 almost every day. And so to try to have a full-time job during the day was just impossible. So I started thinking, what could I do at night that made some pretty good money? And it, w- the first thought was, let me try to be a bartender. So I went and got a bartending license. I felt pretty good about that. And, I started trying to get, I was hustling. I was working at several clubs. Most places were like only kind of like weekend only kind of spots. And like, if they had people already there, they had more seniority. So if they were open during the week, the people with higher seniority um, got those shifts. So I wasn't getting any calls like outside of Friday night, Saturday night. Um, so I had to hustle and have two or three places that I could kind of get 4 or 5 days from throughout the week. So that was my first experience, just like hustling and grinding, trying to make stuff happen. And while I was at the school, they made it mandatory. You had to do at least one internship. And one of them was Image Group Entertainment. And at the time, that was like the largest production company or production facility in New York. It was massive. It was like 3 floors. I mean, I never even walked around the whole place. It was so big. Um, you just get lost. It was a labyrinth of a place. It was huge. Um, but yeah, despite how huge it was, there was only like 3 or 4 interns. So I was one of a few that they interviewed and picked to come and participate in the program. And I was like, I remember the one job I remember doing because I really liked it. They were shooting like, I don't know, at least a handful of reality shows. And so th- one of my assignments was to watch the tapes and log what was objectively happening on the tape so that an editor did not have to watch the whole tape. They already knew, there was notes that said, hey, this is what you're going to see an interview with a lawyer on this or that, or, whatever the show was about. I found that so fun. Like it was cool. And I felt like a contributor. And I was definitely part of the target audience. So it really felt like productive work. And I was very happy to do it. But it was just an internship. Didn't last forever. It was a very exciting time, especially for a young man, um, just beginning life. There's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. Now, besides the hustle, I mean, man, the social life I started developing, man, it was amazing because it was like And part of this is it's amazing because it was like a first for me. I went to Michigan State, huge schools, like, the population is something over 40,000 probably, and, a large campus. So I'm used to being in like big places, but still, New York morphed just about any place. Okay. So, socially, it was like there's not a lot of space, right? Your hotel rooms are small. Your seating areas are small at restaurants. They don't have a lot of space. Space is really a luxury that you have to pay for out there. So, you went to a restaurant with a friend of yours and you're sitting close enough to the next table that you're all on kind of like in each other's conversations if you wanted to be. So there would be so many nights when that would happen, that very thing would happen. I'd go out with a friend or something, and the next thing you know, we made friends with a couple over here, a couple over there. Next thing you know, there's 3 or 4 tables all, like, talking, and that just happened time and time again. It was so much fun. I would go to a place called ESPN Zone. I don't know, I think there's one left in Anaheim, California, but there used to be, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them, maybe a few more, and, there was one in Times Square, and it was just like it was a pretty cool experience, to go watch the games, and we'd get chicken nachos all the time. Um, it was just so much fun. It was so much fun. And my buddy, one of my close friends, Raf Shiki. That's what I call him, the Raf Shiki. Um, he was Dominican, so we would like try to find really good places to go eat. That was like something we enjoyed doing, just kind of wandering around. He had been in New York for years, at least probably 20 years. And but his family moved over from DR, and we would go. There was a place called El Cantinero in Union Square, and I'm telling you, and some of the little mamacitas in there that we would meet on the Friday nights after work. We'd get out, we'd go down there. And first it was just a it was kind of just a little dinner crowd, right? And we would order a pitcher of margarita pitcher, and we'd have our chips and salsa and whatever else we had, And right, I don't know what time the place started transitioning, but sometimes we would end up being there to the point where it turned into kind of like I guess yeah, we'll call it a dance club kind of environment where the restaurant kind of cleared out a little bit to allow a little bit of tables. They would clear it out and allow like, you'd be dancing in there. So I was listening to all kinds of salsa, merengue, and I mean whatever they were playing. I loved it. What was my song I used to love? Was it Ron Con Con, Tito Puente, something like that. I mean, I loved it. It was we used to have a ball, and I mean, New York is is the fashion capital of the world, right? So imagine being 22, 23, 24, whatever. And I was a decent looking guy at that time, probably 50 pounds lighter, a little more in shape, Um, so I did quite well. I mean, I was there was there was some of the most beautiful women from around the world go to New York. I was dating, or just friends, not always dating, but I was going out with women from Hungary, Sweden, Japan, you name it. What was it? Bulgaria, Slovenia. I had a girlfriend from Slovenia. You name it. I mean, they were just as curious about us as we were about them. So, and this is like before like again, before cell phones and social media. So when you went out with people, you had their attention. They weren't texting 40 other people and, trying to see what kind of likes the clicks they've got on their pictures or whatever. It was nothing like that. It's crazy because New York can be like equal parts both fairy tale and nightmare. It depends on like if I'm on the train late at night and I fall asleep and wake up in Jamaica, Queens. That was not that didn't feel too safe after certain hours in particular. Some of the traffic that was getting on the train then, or sometimes I go to a buddy's place in the Bronx, and they would refuse to let me leave their place late at night by myself to go to the him and his boys, like, I don't know, he had a brother and some of his whoever we were with, they would walk me to the train. It was like that, you know. So there could be a lot of dangerous places, but then there was like I had an I lived in a flat in a house right by Coney Island Beach. I was like one train station. Let's see where I got off at like Bay Parkway or something like that on the W train, I believe. And there was like the next stop was Coney Island. And so it was like 5 minutes from me. Um, and in fact, I could like walk not even a full block and I was at the water. That's how close my uh flat was to the shore. But there was no beach in this part where what was it name? Bensonhurst. That's where I live. Bensonhurst. And but I could go to Coney Island like that, and it was cheap. The food, at least at that time, it felt like a poor man's paradise. Hot dogs, whatever drink you wanted, you could walk around. If you wanted a beer, you could just walk around the beach with cups of beer. It was like so cheap. It was a poor man's paradise. Um, and they did in the summer they did fireworks every Friday night. So like it was just a fabulous type of it was great. It was great. It really was great. And I was going to see plays, the theater. I remember I had we had for school, we had to see at least one play and write a report on it or something. And I had a friend girl from that I knew from Michigan State. She came out. We great friends. Sam Bam, I'm talking about you. Um, and she flew out, and I think I treated her to the Frankenstein or some derivative of that. But it was Frankenstein. I just, and it was just amazing. She thought it was a Broadway play. It was like off Broadway, but the production and the acting was so incredible. It was just so. This might be the best play I ever seen in my life. One day, what happened? Someone didn't show up. Like the acting conservatory was connected to the New York's largest casting studio, and so they like literally shared space. But there was a tech that didn't show up. He was supposed to run this particular casting session for some. It was like I don't know, maybe Pampers or something. So it was nothing but babies crawling around on the floor. It was really no acting to it. I mean, there was no acting to it. So they were desperate. They were just like, "Hey, can anybody in here run a camera?" And I happened to be there. So I was like, "Yeah, me, 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 me." And so I didn't have to deal with learning the casting process so much in this very first job. I didn't have to even think about that. All I had to do was turn the camera on and off and make sure I get the recording of the babies crawling around and the mother saying the name, and that was it. So I did that for one day, and that allowed me to kind of get through the logistics of what it meant to put someone on tape without having to worry about the other side of it, which is directing the performances that you're getting on tape. And so after day one, they said, "Hey, listen, do you think you could do this the next couple of days?" They forget it. They weren't gonna hire the person that had flaked on them again. So I said, "Yeah, sure." So that one day turned to 3 days of work for me. And, it was more than the pay was better than anything I had been doing. Um, so like I was like, "Yeah, this is cool." And then next thing you know, I started getting, other casting directors that walked by the studio saw me doing that. And so it was like, okay, they felt like, we see him doing it. He's doing it, so he can do it for me. And so that's when ended up happening. That's how my freelance camera career in New York really got off the ground. And this was the same studio where like I say in the book, I mentioned how Denzel Washington came in and cast his first feature directorial debut, Antoine Fisher. This is also the same casting studio that Selma Hayek came in and cast her directorial debut for Showtime. So, yeah, it was a hubbub. It was. I didn't know it, but like, I didn't know it going into it. But I mean, casting is really the place where talent meets production in a sense. Like I was meeting people from the above the line positions, producers, directors, as well as, some writers. And I was meeting the talent that were gonna be in the projects. So like it's really this synthesis of, I mean, that's where everything's at. It's just that's where I met everybody. And it's funny because I think back in high school, if someone had asked me what did I want to be outside of an NBA player, my answer to that was, well, I'd like to be a psychiatrist. I thought I wanted to be a prescription writing doctor that helped people through mental issues. Um, I'd say that I either wanted to be that, or I wanted to be the person that picked people to be in movies. I didn't know what that was called. I had no idea what that was called. And I kind of, I just kind of fell into it, into the whole casting, directing, and I just fell into it. But man, I mean, think about it like this too. I mean, I'm at this acting conservatory. I'm working in casting, mostly in the beauty fashion type sector, and I'm about 23, 22, 23 when I first fall into this. Um, it was a whole different dynamic socially. It's like if you go to let's say group of guys or whatever go to a bar, club, or, wherever they go, to some restaurant, and they want to meet a young lady or whatever. There's a there's a little dance there, right? Where maybe she's difficult or playing hard to get, or her friends are kind of like they're doing the dance circle that they do, or there's like there's a guard up is what I'm getting at. But now I'm in this situation where I'm surrounded by like beauty. And I'm whether I'm filming it, casting it, in class with them, um, it's like especially at the work situation, I'm getting paid to, uh well, casting is judging. Let's just face it. Like, it's, people say, "Oh, you shouldn't judge people." That's the job of casting, right? So knowing that, um, then whenever a talent, a model, actor, whoever goes in for a casting, they want to be judged well. They want to be well received, well liked. So in dealing with talent, it wasn't putting the guards up. It was more of they want to get to know you. They want you to like them. So, like, I didn't even if a buddy called me and said, "Hey man, let's go out, let's go somewhere and try to look at some girls," or something like that. I'm like, "Bro, what are you talking about? That's not even no, that's not something. Let's go out and have a good time and see what happens, but I'm not going with you to go out to go look at some girls." I didn't need to do that. I could go to work, get paid to do that, right? So, like, New York was just a wonderful, wonderful time for a young man like me who was already naturally social, creative. I had a lot of hustle in me. It was like the perfect synthesis of everything that I was about at that time. It just New York made the dream feel reachable, and I'll always love it for that. Now, as magical a place as New York could be, there is always an underbelly. I received some of my first warning signs about life in New York as well. Um, I, I got there New Year's Eve of 2001, right? So I got there December 31st, 2000. Next day is 2001. So I got there before 9/11. And but obviously 9/11 happens 9 months later. And it shook things up quite a bit in ways that I don't fully understand all the correlations, but the studio I was working at was having financial struggles here and there. I think there was less production happening in New York. Um, there was less tourism. There was less, uh, there was a lot of universities there, and maybe enrollment was going down. People weren't um, flooding New York quite as hard as they had been, I guess, and it was affecting business. It was affecting things. The studio was struggling. Paychecks started bouncing. Cash flow was getting tight. That's really when I started getting into, like, credit cards, because I needed to make ends meet, right? Sometimes it's just I didn't have the cash flow all the time to cover bills when I needed to, so, um, I started dipping into the credit card game, and, this was probably my first real experience, in the valley, right? Life is a bunch of, hills and valleys, and here I am in the valley. And we were all trying to rally around the owners, the studio. This time period where uh, checks were bouncing. I mean, I started, like, couldn't pay rent, and my job was had to write a letter to let my landlord know that, hey, this is real, this is legit. He's not coming up with this. Um, and as soon as we can pay him, uh, I'm sure he'll settle things up. You know, this was the warning signs that it's like the dream was real, but so was the instability. The two came together. Um, and that's how it is sometimes. Sometimes the same belief that gives you courage can also make you underestimate the cost. And here's my closing lesson and question for you. Um, the lesson I would say is that, New York gave me courage. It gave me hustle. It gave me proof that I could survive in big rooms. But it also gave me uh, my first warning that a dream without a foundation can become fragile. So, my closing question to you listening is, what dream did you chase before you fully understood what it would cost? What dream did you chase before you fully understood what it would cost? So, next episode, I'm going to talk about what happened when the dream moved west and why Hollywood didn't save me. All right. But the main message today is that ambition can get you moving, but wisdom has to help you stay standing. New York gave me the dream, but it also gave me the first warning that the dream alone would not be enough. Thank you so much.